Chapter 149 of Srimad Bhagavatam, the birth of Krishna. The birth of Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Lord Narayana, who is the soul of the universe, who is the refuge of everyone, entered the mind of Vasudeva. People were amazed to see glow that emanated from Vasudeva. He shone like the noonday sun, since the Lord had found an abode in him. Devaki received in her the embodiment of auspiciousness, the essence of all the wealth and glory of the universe, the soul of the universe, the indestructible Atman which resides in every living and non-living things. Devaki had the great good fortune of becoming the mother of the Lord of Lords. Like the east glows with the newly risen moon, she looked beautiful. Her form was radiant, but the world could not see it, since she was a captive in the house of Kamsa. Her glory was hidden like a lamp placed inside a pot. Like Saraswati, the goddess of learning is hidden in the mind of a pandit who is greedy about his learning and refuses to impart it to others. Kamsa, however, knew that she was glowing with an unearthly light. Devaki was holding the Lord in her womb, and the entire house was bathed in a strange light since she was there. Her lips bore a beautiful smile, and Kamsa, looking at her, spoke to himself and said, "Devaki has never looked like this before. It seems to me this strange glow in her is there because of the child that is to be born. I think it is Narayana who is to be born, and that is why she looks so very beautiful. I must take proper precautions lest he should do what he has promised to do. I do not want to die. I could kill her now. But then she is a woman. She is my sister, and she is with child. Each killing in itself is an unforgivable crime, and the world will condemn me if I kill her now. All my fame and all my wealth and even my lifespan will suffer because of this sin. It is not a fact that a man who lives in constant association with terrible deeds is but a walking corpse. When he is alive, people will curse him, and when he dies, he will go to hell, which goes by the name Andattamas." Kamsa desisted from killing his sister and awaited the birth of the child with impatience. The thoughts of the coming child had become with him an obsession. While sitting down on a seat, he would suddenly stop and look at the seat, since he thought he saw a child on the seat. He would tell himself, "There was a child on the seat and I was about to sit on it. Terrible." He would then go to bed and try to lie down, and there too he would see the child. He would move away from there and stand far away. Looking down, he would see a child at his feet. He would go and sit down to eat. Instead of food, he would see the child on the plate. He would get up in disgust and walk from there. At every step, the child would persist in lying in his way. To Kamsa, the entire world seemed to be pervaded by the Lord of Lords in the form of a mere child. The time was drawing near. Brahma, Mahadeva, and all the Devas went to the presence of Devaki and stood in front of her with folded palms and praised the Lord. They said, "Salutations to thee, O Lord. You were gracious enough to take different forms at different times to save us from despair. You were Matsya, Hayagriva, Kurma, Narasimha, Varaha, Hamsa, Parashurama, Rama, Yagna, and Kapila. Many other forms were assumed by you. Now, when the earth needs you, please save the world from the great suffering she is undergoing. We bow down to you." They then spoke to Devaki and said, "You are fortunate, princess, since you will be the mother of Lord Narayana himself. Adisesha has already been born to you, and now this child, which is to be born, will be the savior of the world. You need have no more fear of Kamsa. His days are numbered." Having pacified her and encouraged her, Brahma and the rest of the celestial host vanished from their presence. The time was auspicious. It had the charm of all the 6 seasons. The planets and the stars were in the positions from where they showered peace and joy to the world. The 4 quarters were clear and placid, and the star Rohini was in the ascent. The star which is governed by Prajapati, the sky was clear and studded with stars which were shining brightly. The waters in the rivers were clear and sweet. The lakes were filled with flowers, lotuses and utpalas. The trees were covered with flowers. A gentle breeze was flowing, and it brought soft and intense scents of the flowers with it. The fires which were kindled by the Brahmins were burning without smoke, and an air of peace and tranquility pervaded the earth. The minds of all men were happy for no reason. Only Kamsa was unhappy. The divine Dundubi was being played in the heavens. Kinnaras were singing, and so were the Gandharvas. Siddhas and Charanas were chanting words of praise. The Apsaras and the Vidyadhara women were dancing with abandon. The Devas and the Rishis showered flower on the earth. There was heard a great rumbling from the clouds, which was like the roar of the ocean. It was midnight. The Muhurta was Abhijit, and Narayana, who is in the hearts of everyone, was born to Devaki, the wife of Vasudeva. Devaki gave birth to Narayana like the east brings forth the glorious moon. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishnarpanamast. Chapter 150 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna is taken to Gokula. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudeva looked at the newborn child and he was amazed. It was not an ordinary child. Narayana had appeared in his real form. Vasudeva saw that it was not a child but Narayana himself, who was lying there in his arms. He looked at the lotus eyes, at his four arms, at the Shankha, Chakra, Gada and Padma in his four hands. Vasudeva saw the famed mark on the chest of the child, the mark known as Srivatsa. The jewel Kaustuba was gleaming on his neck and he was wearing yellow silk. Dark as a rain cloud, he made the entire place shine with the splendor of his crown. His earrings, which were shaped like fish, with a glory that was himself. Vasudeva looked at this glorious form and kept on looking without moving his eyes. It looked as if he was drinking the beauty of the child with his eyes. He came to his senses, realizing that he had just become the father of a child, and being a Kshatriya, he had to perform the usual rites for the child. He worshipped 1,000 Brahmins, and with his clothes dipping with the holy waters of the river, he gave away 1,000 cows as gifts. All this he did in his mind, promising to himself that he would do it all the moment he could do so. Vasudeva then placed the child on the ground with folded palms and with his head bowed in humble worship. He spoke words of prayers to the Paramapurusha. He then said, "In your infinite kindness to the earth and to the poor, Vasudeva and Devaki, you have assumed the form of a human being. How can I speak the words of thrill that are rushing to my lips? I am no longer unfortunate. I am the most fortunate among men, and my wife has the honor of being the mother of the Lord himself. Great is your mercy towards us." Devaki then said, "You are the sole destroyer of everything. Please have pity on Mother Earth and on us, and put an end to the tyranny of Kamsa. And please let not Kamsa see you in this form, the form to see which yogis spend endless years in penance, the form which is granted to the sight of very few men. It is not meant for ordinary eyes like mine to dwell on your divine form. Please hide this glorious vision. Your birth has made me sad. Unlike other mothers, I cannot keep you for myself. You know, my lord, how Kamsa has killed all the children. I have borne all these years. Even now, word would have reached him that you have been born. He must now be rushing towards you with his sword held aloft in his right hand. Let him not see you in this form. He does not deserve it. The Lord said, Devaki, you are the purest of women. In your previous Janma, you were born in the line of Swayambhu Manu, and your name was Prishni. This Vasudeva went by the name of Sutapas. You both were commanded by Prajapati to create, and both of you performed strenuous tapas. Your mind was set on me and only me. The penance went on for 12,000 years. I was pleased with your devotion and appeared before you in this very form which you see now. I asked what boon you wanted. You were both deluded by Maya at the moment. After all the severity of the penance you had performed, you would have had to ask for moksha, release from human bondage. But you wanted me as your son. You then became involved in the pleasures of the world, and in course of time I was born to you. I was called Prishni Garbha and became famed for my good qualities. Later, you both were famed by the name Kashyapa and Aditi. I was then born as your son. Upendra was my name, but I am better known as Vamana, who stopped Bali's yagna. This is the third time I am born as your son. It is to prove to you that Narayana has kept his word, that he would be born as your son again and again, that this form was assumed by me. If you do not see me in my real form, you will again get involved in the Maya of the world and will be unable to attain moksha. But now you will think of me as your son and also realize that I am the Brahman. After this birth, you will attain moksha. You can be sure of that. The Lord was silent, and even as they were looking on, his divine form was lost and he became an ordinary child in their eyes. Vasudeva had been commanded to take the newborn child and live it in Gokula in the house of Nanda, the chief of the cowherds. He was to bring back with him the child which had been born to Yashoda, the wife of Nanda. Vasudeva and Devaki were wondering how this could be achieved, considering that the doors were all locked and armed guards were stationed at every doorway. Kamsa had doubled the guards ever since he knew about the child to be born to Devaki. Vasudeva placed the child in a small wicker basket and covered him with his upper cloth. He held the basket in his hands and looked in despair at the locked doorways. A miracle was seen. The locks snapped open on their own accord, and with amazement writ on their faces, they watched the doors swing open. Vasudeva walked towards the door and found that the watchmen were all sunk in deep sleep. He walked out without any trouble and reached the banks of the river Yamuna. The sky was suddenly overcast and dense black clouds gathered in the heavens. Rain began to fall in torrents, and Vasudeva did not know how he was going to cross the river which threatened to brim her banks. Placing his faith in the Lord, Vasudeva stepped into the waters. Without his knowledge, Adisesha followed him, and with his 1,000 hoods he protected the child from the rain. The river Yamuna, whose waters had swollen so much because of the downpour caused by Indra himself, suddenly gave way to Vasudeva, even as the ocean gave way to Sri Ramachandra when he wanted to cross the sea and reach Lanka. Vasudeva reached Nanda Gokula following the commands of the Lord. He went straight to the home of Nanda. He reached the apartments of Yashoda, Nanda's queen. Vasudeva saw a child lying by her side. Gently, he lifted the child after placing his own son by the side of Yashoda. He placed the other child in his basket. It was a girl. The entire Gokula was asleep in a trance. Vasudeva traced his steps back to Mathura and came back to his prison. He placed the child by the side of Devaki and he found that the doors had locked themselves. He placed the irons on his ankles and hands, and they waited for the coming of Kamsa. And he waited for the coming of Kamsa. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamast. Chapter 151 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Vishnu Maya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The palace was roused by the lusty cries of a newborn child. The guards, who were at the doorways, rushed to the presence of Kamsa and said, "My lord, Devaki's child has been born. We hurried here at once to inform you about it." Kamsa was lying on his bed, trying to sleep. Sleep had forsaken him long ago. Ever since he knew that Devaki was with child, that it was her eighth child, he knew no peace. Seeing the unearthly halo which had surrounded her, he knew that the child to be born would be the death of him, and he could not sleep. When he heard that the child had been born, he snatched his sword and with his hair flying in the breeze, he rushed to the prison which held Devaki and Vasudeva. Devaki saw him and thought it was the god of death who was coming towards her. So terrible was the look on his face. She fell at his feet and said, "My beloved brother, please do not kill this child. Spare her to me because it is a girl which has been born to me. Every one of my sons I gave you and you killed them all. But this is a girl. What can a poor girl do? I am sure she is incapable of fulfilling the prophecy which has frightened you. Spare her. Killing a woman is a terrible sin. Do not commit that folly. I was once dear to you. In the name of that love I ask you, please give me this one child." She held the child to her bosom and held it tight. Tears were bathing the form of a new-born child. Devaki's prayers fell on deaf ears. Kamsa was like one possessed, and the fear of death had made a beast of him. He snatched the child roughly from the weak hands of his sister, and holding the child with its tender legs, he tried to dash it against a piece of stone. The child, which was Vishnu Maya, slipped from his grip and flew into the sky. Amazed at what had happened, everyone looked up. There, high up in the sky, they saw the form of a Devi. She held several weapons of destruction in her 8 hands. Her neck was adorned with a garland of sweet flowers. Jewels gleamed from her neck, arms and feet. She was holding a bow, a trident, arrows, sword, conch, discus, and a mace. Siddhas, Charanas, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Kinnaras, and other celestial beings were around her, and they worshipped her. From above the world, from the sky where she was poised, she spoke to Kamsa and said, "Stupid fool, how foolish of you to try and kill me. What can you achieve by killing me? Your enemy, the Lord, the child which is destined to kill you, has already been born. Do not kill innocent people without cause, for no reason." She vanished from the sky and earth was left in darkness. The miracle which happened and the words of Vishnu Maya had a strange effect on Kamsa. He was suddenly ashamed of himself for his spite against Vasudeva and Devaki. Full of remorse, Kamsa, with his own hands, removed the handcuffs and chains which had bound their hands and feet and said, "Oh, my dear sister, my dear Vasudeva, I feel extremely sorry for all that has happened to both of you because of me and my cruel nature. In my love for life, I became a demon and killed all your children. My heart had become empty of all compassion and love for others. I dread to think of the future about the special hell which will be waiting for me when I am dead. I have been guilty of child murder." For a while he was silent and then spoke again. "I have known that human beings speak lies to serve their purpose, but till now I did not realize that even the gods speak lies. Believing the words of an unknown voice from the skies, I killed my sister's children. Devaki, please forgive me and please do not grieve for your dead children. This earthly body of ours is transient. It is like a vessel made out of mud, like a pot, when broken, loses its form. Even so, the human body loses its form when death comes. But the Atman inside it is like the air in the pot and is never destroyed. Here, there is no cause to grieve. The one who knows does not feel sad at the recurrence of death and birth. But the ignorant person who does not know the truth about Brahman gets deluded by the ego. He feels that the Atman and the body are inseparable. Life on this earth with the samsara where man marries women and gets children is the life led by an ignorant man, and to him the earth is full of pain and pleasure, alternatively, depending on whether he is with his children and those dear to him, or parted from them by death and such like. As long as man is caught in the web of Maya, he will not learn the truth, and so he keeps on grieving. But you are both different. You know that every being born on this earth has been born so because of the karma it has performed in its previous birth. Ignorant people think ignorantly and consider that someone has killed and someone has been killed. But you know that it is not so. And so, armed as you are with real wisdom, please be gracious enough to forgive this sinner Kamsa. With the tears flowing from his eyes, he fell at the feet of the two erstwhile captives and clasped them in his hands. Devaki and Vasudeva, being very noble and good, realized that he was genuinely repentant and unhappy. They raised him up and told him that they had quite forgiven his misdemeanor. Devaki smiled at him and said, "My dear brother, what you say is quite right. It is only the unwise, those uninitiated in the truth about the Atman, it is they who suffer from the pain of separation and pleasure due to passing things. So long as the difference between illusion and reality is not realized, feelings of sadness, happiness, sorrow, fear, hatred, avarice, obsession, arrogance, and such like develop in the heart of man. They envelop his thinking powers and blind him. When a man hates another, he hates himself, since the same Atman is residing in the bodies of the hater and the hated. If this truth is realized, man will never more be involved in the world of pain." When he found out how noble and forgiving they were, Kamsa felt even more humble, and taking leave of them, went back to his palace with a light heart. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Chapter 152 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Kamsa's Campaigns. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. When the sky is overcast with dense clouds, it is not possible for the sun to be seen. At times, the clouds do part for a moment and there is a gleam of sunlight caught by the eye. But the clouds cover it again and darkness is there again, and the gleam of sunlight is just a memory which fades only too soon. It was even so with Kamsa. When he was in the presence of good people like Vasudeva and Devaki, who were so good that the Lord chose them to be his parents, the goodness was contagious, and Kamsa felt that he had understood the truth about one's life on earth, about the foolishness in thinking of oneself as living forever, about loving every living being, since we are all the reflections of the same light. Once he left their presence and went back to his natural company, the mind of Kamsa became clouded as before. The next day he called his ministers and he told them about the strange happenings in the prison, about the words spoken by Vishtumaya. His ministers, who were all haters of the Devas and who were all embodiments of ignorance and foolishness and pride, spoke with great passion and vehemence. The suggestions offered by them were profuse. They said, "It is obvious that the child is kept somewhere secretly, most probably away from the city of Mathura. Maybe another city, a village in the suburbs, perhaps where the cowherds live. The sensible way to tackle the problem is to destroy all children around us who are less than a year old, have not cut their milk teeth yet. The Devas can do nothing to harm you. They have all been defeated by you so often in the wars that they are scared of you. Why? Even the mention of your name is enough to drive them away from any place. As for Narayana, your arch enemy, what can he do? He is always hiding somewhere, afraid to come out and face you in real fight. Lord Mahadeva is but half a man and the other half is his wife. What can he do? Brahma is far inferior to these two. Indra, as you know, is powerless against you and your prowess. Even so, it is but right that we should take proper precautions. We should pull out roots of our enemies when they are tender, When a disease finds a home in the human body, we should find out what it is, where it is, and attend to it immediately. If we ignore it for a while, it will grow suddenly or gradually, and later it will be the death of the body. Even Indriyas, if they are not controlled and brought to bay at once, they will run away with the wisdom of man like horses drag a chariot when the reins are not held properly. Narayana is the refuge of the Devas. He is the very root of tree called Swarga. It has been said that he is found wherever Sanatana Dharma is practiced. And the very foundation, the keystone of this Dharma is the chanting of the Vedas, cows, Brahmins who are forever performing yagas, yagnas and tapas. The best way, my Lord, is to destroy this Narayana. The best way, my Lord, to destroy this Narayana is to kill all these Brahmins who study and propagate the Vedas. Kill the rishis who perform tapas. Kill the cows in the ashramas, since they give butter and ghee to feed the fires in the ashramas, the sacrificial fires. The several forms of Narayana are reputed to be the Brahmins, cows and the Vedas, and abstract qualities like tapas. Truth speaking, self-control, subduing the Indriyas, concentration in one's meditation, compassion, patience and yagas. Narayana loves the Devas and the entire celestial host led by Mahadeva and Indra. He is a well-known hater of the Asuras. As we told you before, the Devas and the others can do you no harm. It is only Narayana who is our only danger. Wearing the noose of death round his neck, thinking that it was a garland of flowers, Kamsa forgot all the many good qualities he was born with. He was pleased with his ministers who, to him, were his well-wishers, friends. At once he made arrangements for Asuras to go in all the four quarters and harass the many Brahmins and the Yagnashalas. The Asuras went about their tasks happily, not knowing that death was fast approaching every one of them. Is there anything more powerful than the hurting of good men to shorten one's life, to take away his wealth, his fame and righteousness, his wife and children, his hope of salvation? Nothing can help an evildoer who is ever eager to perform evil. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.